Am I audible to the back?
Yeah.
For far too long, the Dravidian identity has been suppressed. The concerns of the people south of the Vindhyas haven't been properly dealt with, and the culture of apathy been allowed to spread nationwide. We believe on side opening government that aggressive policies is the only way to reverse the tide, and the decline of this form of aggressive politics is what we regret the most. Right? From opening government, I'll give you two major arguments. Firstly, I'll talk about why secessionist tendencies is justified in Dravidian politics, and secondly, I'll talk about what sort of outcomes these aggressive policies are likely to bring, and my member will mesmerize you with his ability to explain how the Dravidian people will be better off on our side of the world, right? But firstly, why these tendencies are justified, right? We believe that secessionist tendencies are justified when one part of the country stops another part of the same country from accessing their unique sense of identity and forces upon down their throats a culture of homogeneity and condemns them to systemic violence by denial of the right to access their identity, right? How does this happen in the context of this debate, right? We believe that firstly, North India has a fundamentally different culture from that of the South India, right? We point to the examples of a different form of caste system existing in the South. We point to the fact that the same religion is practiced differently in different parts of the country, right? But secondly and more importantly, even though the two parts of the country might have different sense of identities maybe, what becomes most important is that one identity has always sought to dominate over another identity till now, right? We believe that nationalism in India is a uniquely North Indian concept which forces people to believe that India has been born out of some single Aryan race and must always have a single identity, right? We believe that this forcing down of nationalism or down the throats of the Dravidians means that they are uniquely singled out whenever they try to legitimately access their culture, right? Then they're called things like anti-national. They're called things like anti-national when they reject this idea as if that is the only idea that exists, right? I point to the example of when Bangaloreans, people in Bangalore legitimately protested against the imposition of Hindi, a foreign language, in their cities, and they were brushed off as someone who were against the idea of the integration of India. We on side opening government say that if this is the idea of integration of India, we don't think that such an India deserves to exist. I'll take closing.
Alright, clarification. So, do you think that Dravidian culture can exist outside of a mandate of Dravidian politics?
I think that Dravidian politics is important in preserving Dravidian culture, and I believe that at the point at which Dravidian politics aggressively pushes for the benefit of Dravidian culture, you are able to save it better on our side, right? But continuing on this idea of diversity, right? We believe that a diverse nation can only exist if it accepts that there are different cultural identities which exist and all of which have a legitimate claim to the idea of a nation, right? We don't think that there is any point of a diverse nation existing if it seeks to homogenize cultural identity. Therefore, the burden on side opposition today is to prove why Dravidian people and people living in South India should meekly accept the erosion of their culture in the national discourse and the sort of North Indian nationalism that is forced upon them and cannot be stopped, right? But what are the likely outcomes we are going to see in our world, right? What we regret most is how in the past Dravidian politicians were able to celebrate their culture, celebrate their unique culture, even to the extent that they were able to denounce any attempts at homogenizing their culture and forcing a foreign culture on them, right? We regret the decline of radical politicians who put their Dravidian identity above their Indian identity and who forced the rest of India to see South Indians as a separate identity, right? what is the likely outcome if such politics returns, right? We don't think that this is likely to lead to secession, but we believe the threat of secession will lead to a greater sharing of federal powers by bringing politicians across India to the negotiating table, right? Two reasons why this is so. Firstly, we believe that South India is a significantly powerful economic entity which has among the highest literacy rates in India and among the some of the fastest growing states in India, and it also has a net positive tax revenue, which means on an average it gives tax to the rest of India, right? This means that any attempt for them to this means that when they violently try to oppose any sense of identity, we believe that politicians across the board will have to try to take them seriously, right? But secondly, we believe that this threat of secession will force politicians to reconsider their stance, right? We believe that firstly, it is the moral duty of politicians to engage with their citizens, and they will lose a lot of legitimacy if they don't, right? Secondly, we believe that South Indian politicians are hugely popular, who are well versed in the nitty-gritties of politics and who are well placed to get a place at the negotiating table. Why then do we think that this aggression is the unique way, right? We believe that nationalism, the increase of nationalism in India has coincided with a decline in Dravidian politics and aggressive Dravidian politics, and we do not think this is a coincidence, right? Regardless of what I just said, we don't think this is a coincidence, they are related, right? We believe that North Indian politicians have a tendency to view India as one homogeneous entity and treat all grievances as illegitimate, which do not conform to this belief, right? Why are they particularly empowered to do so? This is because they are no political harms in terms of their voter base when you likely brush away their claims, right? But the point at which you force intensely nationalistic politicians, you force them to face the threat of losing face among voters, which will happen in case of secession. You force nationalistic politicians to lose all sense of legitimacy when they simply cannot keep India together. We believe that at that point they will be forced to negotiate with these people, and they'll be forced to legitimately see the grievances of these people, which is why I'm proud to propose.
Thank the Prime Minister for that speech and invite the Leader of Opposition to
We think in a world, political carnage will simply ensue at the point at which you decide to push an identity towards others that is simply not legitimate, and simply says that, and simply ensues that when you hit a nerve, when this ensures that you can easily portray others as villains and shift the onus of responsibility from others as a political party to people who have apparently oppressed you. We think that at the point we simply must have the decline of the Dravidian ideology to be prevalent in our world, right? We think that in as much as OG comes up and says that there's North India versus this debate is basically about North India and South India, it's correct, but it's pretty simplistic, right? The way this debate must work is to understand exactly what a Dravidian ideology entails, right? We must understand that the origins of it are things such as non-Brahmins being oppressed. At that point, it's not just North India versus South India. It's the instilling of the belief that non-Brahmins have been like oppressed by North India, right? So Dravidians in South India are the ones who have been like disproportionately disadvantaged at the point at which North India acted as a bad entity in this debate, right? What are we going to tell you from our side? We're going to tell you why we think that politics is simply going to be muddy, and why we think that's not going to effectuate change that is simply necessary for these disadvantaged people, and why we think that at the point in which violence is instilled through these dirty politics, the message that should be sent to essentially benefit these people is conflated with illegitimacy, and so on and so forth. But now for extensive rebuttal against Oli, right? No analysis as to why Tamil culture must be mutually exclusive from patriotism, right? I request them to actually visit Tamil Nadu for once and exactly see what's going on. Irrespective of the fact that there is a Tamil answer where everyone says Nanu Tamil and like goes about talking about Tamil pride and everything, they still idolize people like Subramaniam Bharatiya and like notable Tamil poets who have essentially like shown that patriotism isn't necessarily mutually exclusive from things such as Tamil identity. At the point at which we can prove to you that like patriotism and like Tamil culture can still coexist and are essentially conflatable, we think we successfully take down this debate. But then this idea that there's an idea of the Aryan race being portrayed and like there's a superiority complex that North India has, right? North nationalists such as BJP have been trying to say exactly the opposite, right? The way it's worked is to say that they were the ones who influenced the Aryans, not the other way around. At that point, it simply means that people from India are the people who have essentially influenced a race that's trying to be portrayed greater by them, right? No analysis as to why this essentially matters. But then they say anti-nationalism exists and like this is going to be like terrible. We think that that's simply worsened on the side at the point at which like politics is muddied and like you're pushing an identity towards people that is simply illegitimate, right? Moving on to constructives. Firstly, why we think that the onus of responsibility is shifted from a political party that stands for election to other people, and why we think that this isn't going to like end up giving people the help that they deserve, right? Because this is how we think it will work, right? We think it's very easy for people who have been oppressed to have a nerve hit on them at the point at which we can say that those people have oppressed. That is to say, no thank you sir, that is to say that at the point at which, no thank you. That is to say, at the point at which a person is easily villainized, then it looks like when it looks like you're the most passionate person who is essentially like trying to support them, we think it's very easy for you to conflate an identity with the political party supporting that, and we think that that's simply legitimized, right? We see this all around the world, right? We've seen this when Donald Trump has been trying to push an identity. We've seen this when DMK has been trying to push that very same identity and trying to delegitimize the AIADMK. What does that mean? That means that at the point at which an oppressed identity is like the benefit of an oppressed community is conflated with someone who simply looks more passionate about their causes, that means that the party simply garners more support for them, right? Irrespective of the fact that policies for change may not necessarily come out for them, it's very easy for a party to look passionate for what it is essentially standing for. And we think that at the point at which vote bank politics is played in our country, we think that that's pernicious because it's very easy for countries to essentially gain support. Why does this matter? Because at the point at which it looks like a political party that has your interest the best in mind, we think that any counter narrative that exists simply won't stand. Right? We think that at the point at which it looks like the DMK is simply more passionate and it hit a nerve in oppressed communities, we think that at the point it was very easy for the AIADMK to be dismissed for political parties as historical precedent has shown. What that means is that when the party that has the greatest support to essentially garner the power also has the least incentive at the point at which it's very easy for them to villainize other communities. No thank you, I take it. No thank you. What are the harms that come out of this? Firstly, that means that a whole oppressed community is less likely to support someone who is probably more cognizant of their harms and more concerned for them, right? We think that this has simply been shown in historical precedent in things such as DMK. Why does this matter? This means that the government that probably has the least incentive to essentially ensure that change accrues to these people will essentially come into power because it simply looks like they're more passionate about these things, right? So we think that that's how the Dravidian politics has been played out. But secondly, we think that questioning is very hard, right? Because at the point at which an identity has been pushed towards you as a community by Dravidian politics and by these parties, that means that there is no way to question them. Why is there no way to question? No thank you. No thank you. Please take it. No, it's really not. So why do we think that the identity is simply conflated, and why do we think questioning doesn't exist, right? We think that at the point at which it looks like a political party is essentially conflated an identity with the rest of the community, we think that dissent essentially means that you're against that identity, right? What does that mean? That means that at the point at which you're questioning a community that essentially looks like it's standing for things that you're standing for, that means that it looks like you're questioning the identity that they've pushed target and everyone has associated with themselves. That means that anything that the political party probably has that's probably illegitimate is simply hard to be questioned at the point at which it looks like they're probably in the best interest for you. Moving on to my second perspective as to why we think violence will probably be exacerbated and why we think that the conflation of violence is probably with the message that people are harmed is probably going to be hard, right? It is probably going to be like pernicious. Because no, when politics is such that a law is hit in these oppressed communities, we think it's very easy to instill violence as like the context slide said. What does that mean? At the point at which violence ensues, like for the sake of like affirmative action, so on and so forth, it's very easy to delegitimize the cause that is standing for. We see this in things such as the way the Antifa has been conflated with violence and like the message has simply been drowned out. What does that mean? That means it's very easy to portray these people as simply secessionary and not standing for things that they simply deserve, right? We think that at that point, any overarching benefit that the central government probably has in mind for them is simply delegitimizing when other people who simply don't support this cause are look upon this as simply illegitimate. We think we take this debate wrong. Am I audible? Who's entire constructive about like this Dravidian culture being an entire scam used by the government officials within the state government officials within Dravidian India being to like mislead people is absolutely ridiculous. Like they tacitly assume that the people living in these regions are idiots who are absorbing the narrative that is fed to them by the government. Right? The Dravidian culture is real. The issues faced by the Dravidians are real. These are real issues faced by like real individuals living in Dravidian India, which you need to accept, which you need to respect. At that point, we believe you fall out of this debate. However, they also come out to talk about like there's going to be some backlash that's going to be created by what essentially we are proposing, right? Notice panel over here that the harm we are talking about that is to be caused by the backlash is negligible compared to the more direct harm. Right? If they buy into the North Indian narrative that is pushed onto them of like they need to integrate into the national narrative to become legitimate in India, their essential claims which are unique from the rest of India, the claim of identity, the claim of like preserving their own language, will essentially be brushed aside. At that point, like we believe you are justified in pursuing whatever like means violent or non-violent in trying to defend yourself, right? So like we think the harms of like not doing that is far greater than the harms of backlash, right? Victim culture is also like justified over here because we have proved in PM that like historically your claims and your legitimacy has been like attacked continuously. There's an onslaught of attack against you by the North Indian narrative. Therefore, it is justified in you like looking at yourself in being a victim. And in this case, you are the victim, right? And also, therefore, like we believe you can then also gloat on your own success, which is also a part of the Dravidian culture, right? However, in like slight characterization, they fail to address the fact that like the nationalism narrative is pushed onto Tamilians, right? Which is another ridiculous mistake, right? The nationalism narrative being pushed onto them is real. It exists when it manifests itself when a Tamil politician is forced to talk at the UN in Hindi, right? It manifests itself when like schools in Bangalore are forced to teach its children in Hindi, even when like they are primarily interested in teaching them that, right? Now, before I go into my constructive story.
So, appreciating Tolkapian or Sangam literature or any other sort of vernacular culture is something that exists in Dravidian culture without it being part of Dravidian politics. Please separate the two and tell me specifically why you regret the decline of Dravidian politics and not its culture.
Yes, I will prove to you in the course of my speech how Dravidian politics uniquely helps to preserve, protect and therefore enhance the Dravidian culture. Like, I mean, I don't think why they are gloating on this distinction, right? Two things that I'm going to focus on my speech, right? Like, firstly, the massive changes that, like, the good things, because there's a regret motion, the good things that have been brought about by the Dravidian politics that exist, right, that exist uniquely on our hand. And secondly, why this secessionist tendency and Dravidian pride uniquely benefits this culture and is necessary for this culture to exist. Also, like I want to in general justify in principle why this is true, right? The successes of this Dravidian narrative, right? It has been successful in doing whatever has been mentioned in the context, right, about healthcare, education, all that. We believe this has been achieved exclusively within the Dravidian domain, independently of the North Indian narrative. That is, this was it wouldn't this was achieved within Tamil Nadu, Kerala, right, and not in the other parts of India, right. So we believe that it was achieved exclusively because of the ideologies adopted within this Dravidian domain, right. Secondly, this Dravidian culture, right, and Dravidian politics establishes the importance of the Dravidian culture given the context of the Delhi politics being essentially North Indian, right. The politics, which is a sociological extension of general culture of language, of Bollywood, of alienation of South Indians in North India, specifically requires this South Indian culture to be justified, right? And this is only done through this Dravidian narrative, right? It is the counter narrative to the dictum that South Indian pride can be sustained against the barrage of the North Indian narrative, right? It prevents the homogenization of the entire politics, which directly leads to the homogenization of the ideology of the North and South, which is different and is harmful for the regional identity, right? Thirdly, and importantly, this Dravidian culture allowed them to uniquely focus on the independent positive progress that was brought about by this independent thought and independent politics, right? The socialist development of healthcare or education, which was the state's prerogative, right? Yes, we do concede that the national economic buttress did protect against this pitfall. However, we believe this policy could have been pursued only through this, right? And this stands uniquely on our side of the house. Secondly, and more importantly, while the secessionist tendency uniquely benefits them, right? Consider this, that when the South Indian political interests and therefore by extension other identity interests need to be represented in North India, these South Indian politicians need to represent themselves in Delhi Parliament, which is largely influenced by the North Indian narrative, right? When you need to go when you need to go to Parliament in Delhi, when you need to answer the media that is largely influenced by this nationalist North Indian narrative, right? If you concede at any single point that okay, what you're saying is far right and I shouldn't be aggressive, right, in my politics, I shouldn't say that I need to exist independently from you. Zero amount of importance is given to to your own concerns which are legitimate, right? But you need to push your own aggressive brand of state identity, especially when you're dealing with people who are inherently looking at you from the northern south, right? So even the word they are talking about, even when the South Indian politicians goes and talk about the South Indian problem in North India, that is looked at in the national narrative from the North Indian outlook, right? When the Kerala flood happens, right, in the national media, it is addressed that the issue is addressed as how the North India essentially looks at the problem and not how it legitimately affects them as well, right? Why do you think a soft stance is ineffective, right? The moment you concede that North India framework is important, you concede to them their narrative and you concede the fact that their narrative is more important than yours. And also secondly, their narrative is essentially detrimental to the existence of your narrative, right? North Indian narrative specifically says that whatever is different, the ways in which you are different from North India are essentially illegitimate, right? The moment you take a soft stance and say, no, okay, but so, that gets delegitimized. Now, in general, why do you think we are justified in pursuing secessionist tendencies just like in Catalonia and Spain? As I've been repeatedly saying, the claims to legitimacy when you say you're okay with the Spanish narrative, right? Secondly, the claims are important for your own people and they prevent they're somewhat the Spanish narrative is detrimental to Catalonian narrative. And thirdly, as we have brought to you, that this development they've brought in Tamilian region is exclusive to this region and wouldn't have been possible without this politics for all these reasons. Probably.
Invite the deputy leader of ops to further the case inside opening up your
cannot continue to perpetuate without Dravidian politics, right? We think they haven't done that, and all they said is that the only way Dravidian culture will continue to perpetuate and like thrive is if Dravidian politics continue, right? We don't think that's true, and rather from our side of the house we tell you why Dravidian politics is exclusively harmful to the community itself, right? We tell you Dravidian politics has stopped becoming a way for Dravidian culture, has stopped like being a way for Dravidian culture to be backed up, but instead has now become a way for political parties to play divisive politics, right? That is the effect, that's the exclusive harm they were bringing from side opposition, something that they failed to engage with, because all they cared about was to talk about this culture and how it will die out if Dravidian politics don't continue, right? We think that even if Dravidian nationalism started out as a way to represent the cause for Dravidians, what it has become and what ultimately caused its decline was that it became a tool for political parties to play appeasement and vote bank politics, right? We think that it's important that we judge this debate based off this metric, right? We think that, okay fine, so far we use buttons to cite opening government. We told you that, first we talk about how Dravidian culture and their problems exist, man, like they're real. Like, yeah, sure, but we think that the minute it becomes problematic is when that Dravidian culture is used to play appeasement politics, right? When it is employed by multiple political parties to pander to this ideology of Dravidianism, right? We don't contest that Dravidian culture is unique and needs to be protected, right? But we don't think that Dravidian politics is the way to do that, and we tell you why, right? In our constructive manner. Then, we'll also agree that Dravidian problems exist, sure, of course they do, right? They've been oppressed for the longest time. We are not contesting that. But what we're saying is that Dravidian politics do not make awareness of those problems, do not bring a better solution to those problems than what we do on our side of the house, right? Secondly, we think that Dravidian culture also continues to exist and can continue to exist without Dravidian politics in the first place. We think that even after the decline of Dravidian politics, Dravidian culture has continued to perpetuate, and we think that it's very infantilizing on their part to say that if political parties don't stand up for these for the cause of Dravidians anymore, nobody within their culture will die out, right? That's a very paternalizing way of putting that entire argument, right? We think that culture can continue to perpetuate without being used as a tool for political parties, right? And about how about the exclusive harms of how if the Dravidian people want to be secessionary, about how that it uses any incentive for the government to provide them with harm. That what happens is if the Dravidian people want to be secessionary, now they're viewed as they're vilified by North Indians. At a point in time, when BJP wants to effectuate any change for them, they're not able to do so because now any change that BJP effectuates for them is going to be viewed as viewed as illegal, right? We think that this is again an exclusive problem of them allowing Dravidians to be Dravidian culture to be secessionary, right? We think that it's principally wrong. Okay, before that. We think that there is a better way to achieve affirmative action on our side of the house without Dravidian nationalism, right? We think that all the harm that Vikram pointed to you in his speech could be offset by just implementing better affirmative action schemes for them, right? We think this has already been done to a certain extent in terms of the reservation system that is provided for the lower caste. Right? We think that these things already exist. Right? We think that at a point in time when you want to continue to perpetuate this Dravidian politics ideology is when you continue to be more divisive. Right? In general, what's going to happen on their side of the house is that it becomes more divisive. We'll tell you exactly how. Right? We think that Vikram wanted to do this in his speech. Right? We think that's principally wrong for any party. This is important, right? This house regrets the decline of Dravidian politics, right? Not Dravidian culture, anything that they're trying to push on us, right? Dravidian politics. We think that it's principally wrong to derive legitimacy from identity. Vikram already told you in his speech that if the only thing that a political party needs to do is pander to someone's identity, it becomes very easy for them to get away with a lot of things, right? We think that they don't have to do much else to establish legitimacy. Why is that? And especially when there is lack of an effective counter narrative, it becomes that much easier for Dravidians to buy into this narrative, right? We think that this is bad because A, they don't have to do much to win support, and second, that there is no opt-out mechanism for these people. Why do we think that that Dravidian politics in itself is oppressive? Is because the minute you as nationalism, right? The minute you reject nationalism is when is when the people who are also Dravidians around you say that you have rejected your identity. We think that's bad is because people within the Dravidian nationalism that have legitimate dissent aren't able to exercise that dissent because people around them accuse them of now rejecting that larger identity, right? This is the problem with any politics that appeases that raw, sensitive nerve of identity, right? This is something exclusively coming from our side. Nobody has engaged with this, right? We think that means that they're oppressed within the politics or within the political ideology that's supposed to protect them, right? At a point in time, they have no opt-out and they cannot support any other party without being called out for it. Is when they can't. Is when, for example, they're not only oppressed but also they're not only oppressed and also we think that what that ultimately leads to is divisiveness, right? This is again something that is bringing a tangible harm from our side, right? We think that the minute the political parties use Dravidian ideology to instigate people against the state, is when they tell them that the only way for them to be alleviated of their oppression is when they subscribe to the ideology, right? What that means is that they don't allow state structure, like for example the reservation system or any other system that's standing up for Dravidian interests to do the same, right? What that means is that telling them that the only way for them to survive in India is for them to subscribe to this ideology. Do you see, it's very obvious that this sort of concept is inherently oppressive to the Dravidians themselves, right? At a point in time where they have no other party to which they can subscribe to and no legitimate way of dissenting what the Dravidian politics is, what the outcome of Dravidian politics is, when they lose out on things like being able to support other parties and being able to support the state, is also when they cannot dissent the larger harms that these parties get away with, for example instigating violence and causing and saying that that's just because we're offsetting the oppression that these people face, right? We think that allows these parties to get away, and we think that that's a significant harm coming from our side. Dravidian culture can still exist on our side. Proud to.
Why open government is out of this debate? Because they don't understand what this motion is about in the first place, right? We tell you that this motion categorically specifically talks about only Tamil Nadu as a specific region and does not include other states like Karnataka and all these things. We tell you it's extremely important to note that Dravidian politics or Dravidian politics has specifically existed in an isolation in the state of Tamil Nadu, right? Secondly, we tell you that there is a lack of argumentation with regard to how exactly will the homogeneity will be attacked with the same. And we tell you in our extensions why exactly is the homogeneity is a problem for the policy that is implemented in Tamil Nadu, right? Secondly, we talk about why over this debate, simply because they have literally one constructive with regard to how culture is not equal to politics and therefore we should not condemn this, right? We firstly tell you that DMK and AIDMK are two separate entities and one of them is Dravidian and one of them is not Dravidian, which is completely false, right? DMK and AIDMK have both asserted their political identity as to be very, very close to Dravidian, right? Secondly, we tell you about the idea of how culture is in fact related very, very closely to politics in Tamil Nadu specifically, right? We tell you, and then this is what they don't understand. They don't understand things like Jallikattu. They don't understand why Hindi imposition is a problem in Tamil Nadu for the simple reason by virtue of cultural relativism, because they don't understand that why the importance that they attach to Jallikattu and the non-imposition of Hindi is extremely important, right? What happens when a BJP comes into power or a Rajnikant comes into power who basically is ruled as a BJP, right? What happens is that this then actually becomes appeasement because you're now appealing to a particular sector of the society and saying, you should actually speak in Hindi, you should not give a shit about let's say Jallikattu and it's not that important, right? But to tell you, appeasement does not exist in our paradigm for the simple reason that DMK and AIDMK actually recognize the needs of the people and understand that Jallikattu is something that has to be positively asserted as the culture of the Tamil people in the present instance, right? There has to be a political force along the lines of Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi, who have died unfortunately, which means that there is a lack of a political assertment of this culture that exists, right? We assert that this culture will in fact die down if this does not happen, right? We tell you why this vacuum exists in the first place and why is there a decline of Dravidian politics. And we tell you again, Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi have recently died. There is a huge vacuum in terms of who AIDMK and DMK are, in terms of what these political parties are asserting. There are other entities like, let's say, the DMDK, which is Vijay Kant, who is trying to assert a BJP coalition, and so is Rajnikant. Rajnikant is also a person who is talking about the possibility of BJP coalition because it feels like he really wants to get into power regardless of the consequences on the people of Tamil Nadu, right? It's extremely important to note why this happens in the first place. Right? People are not acclimatized to what the law wants. Right? They are not acclimatized to the idea that BJP is a distinct entity and they will impose certain policies which will be distinct from what they have been used to at a certain point of time. Right? Firstly, we tell you that there is a moderating influence on the people of Tamil Nadu for the simple reason that they understand that they are distinct from the north and therefore they have to adopt certain different practices which exist in the south in a certain vacuum, right? We tell you it's better for an OPS or an EPS to come into power and fill this vacuum instead of like BJP being opportunistic and strategic about their like entrance into the south politics by just saying, okay bro, and now we're gonna start like entering into BJP, entering into Tamil Nadu just because we can, and regardless of the consequences of the same, right? We have to talk about the decline of this cult personalities that existed in Tamil Nadu and again like it's part of the Tamil Nadu of Tamil Nadu's culture to have like to revere politicians and everything, right? And we tell you that politics and culture again coincides in that particular right. There are immense number of posters that are of Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi throughout Tamil Nadu because these people literally revere and consider them as a part of the culture, right? We tell you that the new guard of people, of the new people who are entering into this politics is not exactly like what the people of Tamil Nadu want, right? It's basically along the lines of why the Dalit identity in BSP or like in UP politics has to be asserted for a simple reason that you have to make a distinction with regard to the needs of these people because of their like lack of homogeneity with regard to how they respond to certain political policies and everything. Right? We tell you that this is going to create a disjunct and like a rebellion within Tamil Nadu because they don't accept, majority of people don't accept BJP and all these parties in the south at this point in time because of the simple reason because they literally don't understand what they're going through at this point in time, right? Firstly, we tell you what is the major extension that we're trying to point out at this point of time. We tell you that this also is affecting the country as a whole in terms of the North India as well is a lot of people in the north are also opting into an idea of moderation and being more progressive about their ideas of the same, right? For example, task mark in Tamil Nadu is basically the government selling booze to people in order to make sure that they can enjoy themselves or whatever, right? It's a specific culture that exists in the south, right? We tell you that something in Bihar where alcohol has been completely explicitly banned. We tell you that this is going to help people in the north as well to take an example from the south and understand that it's okay for you to be progressive and consume alcohol and it's not supposed to be restricted just because the Nitish Kumar government has to do the same, right? We tell you that firstly, now in terms of clarity, we tell you that North India specifically will get better. South Indian people will be in a better scenario for the simple reason that they are getting a political party which understands them and empathizes with them, and they also understand certain problems which exist by the entrance of the BJP by imposition of certain languages. Before I move on, I'll take those.
So after Thoothukudi, Nedivasal and like the massive amount of centrist influence in Tamil Nadu and given the fact that there's a huge diaspora of Tamil communities outside, why do you think Tamil culture is going to be at risk?
For a simple reason again. So we have to understand that there has been a huge decline and this decline does not exist in other states like Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh for the simple reason that they have not asserted this identity time and again. They tell you that there's been a decline because of the lack of political leaders and this culture is affected because now people are losing out on what they consider to be very, very important at one point of time, right? We tell you this is happening because of the BJP's dominance in like throughout the country, and it's a testament to the fact that the South has held its like frontier and decided that it's going to keep the BJP out, right? We furthermore tell you that at this point of time, the BJP is also not acclimatized to understanding the issues that exist with regard to the particular to catering to these particular people, right? We tell you for the simple reason that now when there's backlash with regard to how if we start imposing this particular identity, it's going to start creating factions within Tamil Nadu as well. We're going to start dividing Tamil Nadu into different sects which are pro-BJP or anti-BJP, which is going to create like a problem with regard to federalism that exists in Tamil Nadu. Every time it's extremely important for the federalism of Tamil Nadu or like some amount of autonomy that is given to Tamil Nadu as a state to be asserted in order to establish the fact that it is in fact different from the other states and therefore has to be taken very proud.
For the speech, invite the member of opposition to start the case.
the speaker, we really like CGU would run a different case. But let's tell you why this debate is lacking in severe context and why they've missed out on what Dravidian politics is and what Dravidian culture is and why it's important to distinguish between both, right? They say that Tamil culture is somehow on the decline and that people are suddenly going to co-opt into the BJP and centrist institutions. It is particularly important to note that in the last 2-3 years of what's happened in Tamil Nadu with Vedanta, with Toothukudi, where you see clear instance, even Nedivasam with your hydrocarbon factory and how the centers had pervasive influence into violating not just institutions that matter for Tamil Nadu, but also the human rights conditions of the Tamil people as well, with them trying to take away Jallikattu, which is fundamentally something that they deeply admire. Even Rajinikanth can't win an election in Tamil Nadu if he stands for the BJP. I don't think that the BJP or Tamil culture is going to be lost, right? And even if they want to make a case that it's going to happen that way, the Tamil diaspora that exists in Malaysia and Sri Lanka, even in London and communities in Sacramento and Tamil, in America and stuff like that, right, are enough clear international motivations to tell you why the Tamil diaspora, unlike any other community in India, is restricted only to Tamil Nadu, but it's sort of become universalized now, right? This debate can't really be had in any meaningful sense of anything unless we understand what Dravidian politics is, right? Unfortunately, everybody's understood Dravidian politics as a static modality, right? They've understood what it means in terms of ideological constraints and they've tried to deconstruct it. It's not. Dravidian politics has always been in a state of flux, which is to say that the Dravidian politics conceptualized by Periyar and Mudaliar and all of these people is not the same as what's being preached by Muthuvel Karunanidhi or Jayalalitha or Stalin, right? So let's understand why it's important to make this distinction, this pause. So the real distinction at the heart of this debate isn't really about what Dravidian politics should be, it's about what Dravidian politics is, right? And let's deconstruct it on those grounds. You have several fundamental, integral constructions of Dravidian politics, right? In terms of their opinions on caste, their opinions on federalism, and their opinions on religion, and their opinions on social sector spending, and on cult personalities, right? Let's deconstruct all of them. Let's start with caste, right? Because Dravidian politics as envisioned by Periyar was supposed to be about affirmative action, which was to ensure that minorities would get uplifted. Tamil Nadu, in status quo today, has 70% reservation for all its communities. It's a joke, it's a laughing matter to assume, to be honest, to even principally call it affirmative action when the majority of your state is basically gaining reservations, right? And I'll tell you the way in which this happens in terms of vote bank politics, which is why it's almost laughable for Roji to come up here, or I'm not really sure which one it was, to talk about how vote bank politics here is how Dravidian politics isn't really about. No, that's exactly what it's about. When you have people like Anbumani Ramadas, part of the 1 year caste campaigns for the PKMK or Tiruma Velavan for the SC community, they don't think of this OBC status or SC/ST status as a symbol of their pride or anything like that. It's simply a financial benefit that they're trying to derive by literally saying, I will get my community to vote for you if you give me reservation. That's the status quo. That's why it's principally problematic. Two quantitatively ascertainable outcomes that stem from this, right? One, you see an insane reduction in the number of Brahmins, Tamil Brahmins, in government posts in Tamil Nadu. And this is accompanied by a radical efflux of the Tamil Brahmin diaspora from Tamil Nadu to communities in London and communities in America, right? Which means Tamil Nadu is inherently losing human capital. Tamil Nadu is inherently losing its ability to function cohesively as a society because you're literally pushing away one entire section of your community on the basis of some retarded anti-Brahmin rhetoric that you want to postulate, right? Apologies for using that word. Additionally, let's deconstruct what this means in terms of religion. Periyar wanted considered religion on the same lines as the communist tradition, where he said religion is the opiate of the masses, right? He wanted religion to be avoided. You start the way in which Jayalalitha or Karunanidhi start the election campaign when they pray in a temple near Poets Garden, the way in which clear studies have been conducted in Tamil Nadu that show that the way in which they can hold people accountable to their campaign promises is by making them swear on God in order for them to give away money to them, shows that religion fundamentally plays an invasive role due to Dravidian politics as it is, right, at the end of the 5th minute. And I'll tell you what that means, right, because it's a fundamental contradiction at the heart of Madras as a whole, because Madras is the religious capital of India, but it starts with rationalist roots, right? And it's important to cleave out this distinction at the very outset. Because Dravidian politics today, unlike what Dravidian politics was in 1920s, if we were having this debate, then maybe it would have been different. But today, it's about not saying there is no God or atheism. It's about co-opting into an institution of God that is anti-Brahmin. It's about co-opting into the institution of a God that shares absolutely no traits with what Brahmins conceive to be God, right? And that real distinction is not only fundamentally just violative of what it what it means to communities within Tamil Nadu as a whole, right? It's not just that. Nadar communities as well have been specifically excluded from what it means in the conceptualization of Dravidian politics, right? So it's not just accountable to Tamil Brahmins, but to a large number of communities who felt at threat, not because they've lost out on Dravidian culture, but because they feel that Dravidian politics has fundamentally eroded what it means for themselves, right? Let's discuss what it means to be in terms of a cult personality and what the problem with this is, right? Like I did say, Rajnikant wouldn't win an election even if he joined the BJP. But here's the problem. In Thoothukudi, you had massive human rights violations, right? And it's important to note this context because even after that, you had approximately 20 to 30% of individuals living in that region, like not just in that region but across Tamil Nadu as well. And you saw this in terms of massive support that he garnered on social media to say it's okay if there were human rights violations, it's okay if those 13 people died, it's okay if the police arbitrarily shot like a 13-year-old girl, it's fine. Rajnikant said it's okay. Do you want to live in a world where you erode your rationality, you erode your institutions of logic to basically listen to everything that one cult personality says? No, we don't want to live in a society like Dravidian politics started on rationalist roots. It's probably the most irrational institution that subsists in India today, which is why, like, we oppose regretting its decline. We in fact welcome it, right? Let's discuss another component of this debate as well, right? Which is the idea of like social sector spending and what this means, right? Like Tamil Nadu government has fundamentally subsidized several programs that you see, right? Like in terms of like not just in terms of like free handouts that they give, like with their free mixies and free grinders that they give every election, the amount of money that they give you, but simply in terms of like so much of healthcare. Yes, okay.
Even if Dravidian culture is already secure, why should a Dravidian meekly accept the rest of India being hostile to their cultures?
Alright, this is the problem with the Dravidian politicians' rhetoric, right? Nobody is fundamentally opposed to like Dravidian culture as a whole. The reason why the rest of India is opposed to it is actually brings me to my next constructive. I deal with social sector spending at the end. It's important to consider what federalist policies are and the secessionist claims that Dravidian politics have made, which is what has led to this like hate that you see majority like across the majority of the rest of India in how they oppose Tamil Nadu, right? First of all, why are strong federalist policies not going to work in a union like India, right? You look at the constitutional machinery of India, you look at the distribution of like powers and functions that you have in terms of the union list, the state list and the concurrent list, it's a numbers game. You're not going to like get Tamilians to go to like the center and suddenly become the prime ministers. Like David Gowda's exception is not the rule, right? So like you're not going to make something like this happen. So given that you can't make something like this happen, what's the problem with Dravidian politics and why do people like hate Tamilians as they so speak? It's because of the fact that like when these people come up here, like when they can't like win their elections on qualitative like policy grounds, which is to say they're not going to give you like they're not going to tell you what they've accomplished in their 5-year term. All they tell you is it's the centre's fault, despite understanding that the centre is never going to help you if you constantly keep saying we want to be away from them, we want to be away from them. At this point, a Tamilian politician can literally come up and say, "Hey, now Tamil and he can win this election." That's the problem with Dravidian politics. But conveniently misses the idea that this debate is about declining of Dravidian politics in the light of the BJP going ahead and steamrolling through the rest of the nation, imposing their idea of nationalism, and the only way that's been countering this is through Dravidian politics. This debate is not just about Dravidian culture and whether Dravidian politics necessarily protects it. This debate is about putting a strong counter to the nationalistic policy and the steamrolling that the BJP has done till date. So I'll tell you why this is the only way to go ahead and do this and why you need to regret it, because of the fact that when Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi died, you don't have enough cultural personality. You don't have anybody strong within Tamil Nadu at this point in time. You need to promote somebody. The only way you do this is with regretting this decline. I'll get to that soon. Few points of rebuttal. Let's take closing options out of the debate. Firstly, they come and talk to you about how you're going to suddenly push trams into UK, into Singapore, into other places, right? Let's understand that we're not pushing them just because of the policies that we take, right? Even if that's the case, I'll deal with their test case later. But let's understand at that point in time, even if they go ahead and do decline this particular move, we don't understand why these people return or why these people don't necessarily leave. We believe the incentives that exist within these different nations is not just because of the fact that you're being excluded in terms of policy, but it's also because of the fact that you get better opportunities in these nations. Right at the point in time, when at the point in time you do go ahead and are necessarily way miles ahead of the other people within your country, we believe it's okay to go ahead and do these particular moves at this point in time. We agree with the fact that it's not going to remain static. We understand with the flux, but we need to adapt to the Modi nationalist wave that's happening at this point in time. I don't think it's okay for Bharat to come and say that we reject the idea of federalism ever existing within India, right? We believe if you're going to have this debate in a place where India can never have federalism, we believe it's a huge burden on government which we can't address, right? Let's understand why federalism is better on our side before I move on to our case, right? Federalism happens only when you get the center to respect you as a state. The only way in which we believe this can happen is if you have a unified front in a unified ideology, which is the only singular ideology that you can get is a Dravidian ideology at this point in time. Why is that so, right? Simply because because of the numbers game, right? If Bharat wants to talk about numbers game, let's talk about it, right? For the past 40 years, both the Dravidian parties, the ADMK and DMK, have necessarily gone ahead and switched position and power every single election, right? Why is that so? Because of the amount of power and the amount of support that they can amass at this point in time. When there was a problem with Peta and Jallikattu, the fact that both of these parties stood up at this point in time, went ahead and had these protesters out, is the point in time in which you know that they're ready to protect Tamil Nadu from the centre's bullshit at this point in time. Let's understand why we win this debate, but let's move on to what Dravidian politics is and why it's so important. Dravidian politics is based on the identity of you being a Dravidian, right? The singular ideology that exists within Tamil Nadu, irrespective of the two parties that exist. Oh, can't come in like you saying, hey look, the ADMK is not Dravidian, so you'll push it if you alienate people from the DMK, right? We understand that both of these parties are Dravidian. At that point in time when ADMK and DMK are both Dravidian, we don't understand the difference of a choice. Oh, was a friend. Why was OVO followed in this debate, right? They come and try to co-opt Bharat's POI about Tamil culture, about how this actually happens, without actually giving you any necessary alternative, right? They say Tamil culture won't die out if Dravidian politics don't exist. They don't necessarily analyze that any further beyond that assertion, right? Look through your sheets. I'm really sorry, OVO's out of this debate. OG's out of this debate when they don't realize that this debate is about Tamil Nadu and I'm talking about Kerala and Karnataka. I don't understand why they can come into this debate at all. Let's understand why Tamil Nadu has the burden of going in and doing this, right? Simply because all the other states in the south at this point, right? And I think there's a common understanding in this room that the south needs some kind of recognition within the north because of the oppression that's happened in the past, right? Let's understand why Tamil Nadu is the perfect place to go ahead and do this. Kerala does not have a singular ideology, right? It keeps fluctuating between the communists and the Congress and doesn't necessarily have the same party for 2 terms in a row. We believe Karnataka has bought into the bullshit of the BJP and necessarily through the past election, you can see what's happening in terms of buying through this nationalized identity. Andhra Pradesh, very similar to Karnataka, doesn't necessarily have a singular strong identity as well. And at the point in time, you need a representation for the south. You need a strong ideological stance taken by a state which is only possible through the state of Tamil Nadu. I'm glad it's clear that's out of the way. Let's take CEO at the best case and let's understand what our case is. The way in which you get federalism is you have a moderating force through the south, especially through Tamil Nadu, right? When the context that talks to you about pragmatic taxation, through progressive policies, through atheism, all of these things exist only because of the fact that you can necessarily go ahead and moderate the north's policies of very regressive policies in terms of beef, in terms of necessarily not letting people into temples, for example, right? We believe at the point in time when you take a clear stance and necessarily showcase your identity and express your identity very firmly, saying that we are the state, we believe in these particular things, we believe it's a very important thing in order to challenge the ideological stronghold that the Modi government has at this point in time. Let's understand why there's a decline and why it's so urgent for you to do this. 2 reasons why it's urgent. First of all, with the death of Karnataka, there exists a vacuum in terms of power due to a lack of cult of personality within Tamil Nadu. Secondly, the 2019 election is arising very closely and this gives a chance for the BJP sit down to go ahead and take what it has not been able to in the past. Let's understand what political vacuum means, right? When you have actors like Kamal Haasan and Rajinikanth who have not necessarily identified what kind of ideological stance they're going to take. When Kamal Haasan day after day comes and tells you he's a leftist, then he tells you I'm a middle left, and then he tells you I'm a middle right, I don't understand what kind of policy he's going to take. Similarly, Rajinikanth is only there possibly for the votes, for the media attention and the PR he can get. When at this point in time, when you don't have somebody who can necessarily rely upon to protect your identity, to protect the facts of your beliefs and fight for you in the center, when these people are ready to succumb to the center and conform to the demands of the center, we believe it's highly problematic for you to have these people representing you. Why do we regret the decline, right? We regret the decline simply because we don't have enough actors at this point in time coming up, taking charge and actually owning up to this Dravidian culture. The last 2 people to go ahead and do this were Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha, right? When they died, we don't realize who the next heir is at this point in time. When you regret this, I'm not taking one, but when you go ahead and regret this at this point in time, you go ahead and incentivize these actors like EPS, like OPS, like Paneerselvam to go ahead and necessarily act on the basis of this Dravidian ideology. When they do go ahead and act on this ideology, you have an ideological stronghold against the BJP. The importance and the urgency of this debate is very simple, Madam Speaker. It's simply this, right? The simple reason and the urgency of this debate is that there exists a homogeneous steamrolling that's happening in terms of India. The only counter to that exists in terms of the whole of India has been the South. In Bengal, nothing's happening with Mamata because she's not taking a clear ideological stance. Taking a stance of being a part of as a Dravidian is something that's very important just because of the fact that you need something to counter the steamrolling. Why do we take it over opening government? Right? Opening government doesn't understand this motion very well. They don't give you necessary arguments as to why they go ahead and take this debate. Opening opposition comes and lies to you simply by saying that, look, you're going to alienate some people who are Brahmins or Dravidians and you're going to push them to the ADMK who they think is a Brahminical party. I don't understand why they think so when they've got T in their name. Let's understand also why closing off doesn't win this debate, right? Closing off doesn't win this debate when they think this debate is just about Tamil culture. I agree that there are people outside Tamil Nadu that are going ahead and propagating the culture through random movies, through random actions, through weird songs. But what's very important at this point in time is to have a stronghold within India where the urgency actually exists. Geographically, you need to counter the Modi government. You need to counter this wave of a lack of federalism. You need to have an ability to disperse the powers that exist within the center. You cannot have the power centralizing in the center. For these reasons, we're very, very proud.
Invite the opposition to end the debate.
On-site closing opposition, we're proud to Tamilians defending Tamil culture and how Dravidian culture is principally different from Dravidian politics, and how by not regretting the decline and by celebrating the decline of Dravidian politics, you can still retain Tamilian culture and Dravidian culture, and it is still something that will keep going strong. Right? We'll start out firstly with their idea of personality cults. They believe that because Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi have died, that it will become extremely problematic to have this rise of just Dravidian culture and not Dravidian politics, and therefore Dravidian politics is the necessary evil in order to ensure that BJP doesn't come barging in, that Congress doesn't come barging in. Right? This is a false binary that they have created because of the fact that when MGR had died, there was no alternative who was already at their political prime to take the place. Right? You had to wet Jayalalitha and wet Karunanidhi until they get their power, until they became the individuals that they now are. Right? In the same manner that we still have Stalin, that we still have Thalapathy Vijay, that we still have individuals like Rajinikanth who possibly want to ensure that they protect Dravidian culture and who are anti-BJP, like how Vijay's entire movie Mercil was, to show that we can still protect Dravidian culture and not step into Dravidian politics and the problems that it is inherently filled with. Right? Firstly, with regard to the idea of federalism and how calling out of nationalist narratives is something that becomes necessary as Dravidian culture. Right? This is not something that is exclusive to being Dravidian politics, because even in Karnataka you can have Congress which calls out on the kind of manner in which northern policies are set. Right? Like Siddaramaiah, as the chief minister of Karnataka in the Congress party, called out the beef ban, called out the beef ban in BJP itself. Right? You can still retain your Dravidian culture, but you can still ensure that you don't have to be part of Dravidian politics to make this sort of calling out. And even in that case, even in the best case, I don't know what are these benefits that come out of calling out of these things and being part of this federal structure in this particular manner. Right? We find it extremely problematic to buy any of their federalism argument because they're constitutionally not feasible. Right? It becomes extremely difficult for you as one small state which has 35 seats in the center to try to push for any sort of federal change, or an opening government extreme case by accusing that by threatening to secede from India, and they'll just be like, oh my god, don't secede and things like that. Right? I don't understand why you will treat them with such high respect in national politics when you are looking at it in such an apprehensive manner and you don't want to engage. Right? The clear alternative model that we've shown is that you can still be part of Dravidian culture and not be part of Dravidian politics. The manner in which Karnataka has functioned only at the end of 5th minute, if at all. Right? So the manner in which Karnataka has functioned, where you still involve Dravidian culture in the manner in which you frame laws, in the manner in which you bring out public education, in the manner in which you ensure that social care and healthcare systems are provided, but not the extreme extent to which Dravidian politics has done so. Right? That is the manner in which we beat them on the argument of federalism itself. Right? Next, on the closing argument on this being the voice of the Dravidian culture itself, right? The problem that we show from this, and this is why it becomes extremely problematic that they don't take the burden. They take the burden only to the extent that, oh, we need a voice in the center that like, oh, Tamilians are in the house, and that's enough, right? But we've shown you that that does not become enough, because for them to prove that that is enough, they have to show what is the kind of change that Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha brought out in the center successfully when they were alive and when Dravidian politics was not on the decline, right? None of them have done that throughout 4 speeches. That is why it becomes problematic. End of it, like I've said before, right? So it becomes extremely difficult for us to buy any of these arguments, because what they've done so far, which is what Bharat constantly focuses on, is the idea that you use this monopoly to bring no change at all, and by saying that like the reason why we can't bring any change is because the center is messing this up. The center is screwing this up for us, right? This is where federalism arguments become extremely problematic in Tamil politics, because of the fact that you don't do anything and you blame the center for it, right? The level to which we analyze this is extremely important, because OO doesn't do this, right? The level to which we analyze this is also in the aspect of social sector spending, right? You will now, as the Tamil government, as Dravidian politicians, now pass extreme social sector spending, right? The extent to which, like insurance policies, healthcare policies, education policies, which are like on the face of it a failing model, right? And then you ask for more funds from the center, because this is the manner in which you run your government. It may have worked in 1920s, because that was the rise of Soviet ideology, that is the rise of socialist ideology in Tamil culture, in Dravidian politics. But at this point of time, in the light of the well-functioning of free market economics, it becomes extremely difficult for you as Tamil politicians to run this argument and then blame it on federalism, then blame it on BJP, then blame it on literally everybody apart from yourself, and still get re-elected by not passing any policies and just by the notions of rhetoric, right? Secondly, I mean, on the next idea, it becomes extremely clear for us to understand that the metric for judging this debate, before we move any further, is on the basis of how Dravidian politics is in status quo, and why we do not regret the decline of Dravidian politics is in status quo, and not its principal roots back in the 1920s, right? That is completely different from now, and that is the reason why this kind of flux that happened with regard to the manner in which you deal with caste issues, and this bastardization of caste politics, and making it completely exclusionary, and making like every little sect start fighting for OBC rights, start fighting for SC/ST rights, and start like ostracizing Brahmin communities. That is problematic.
Okay, tell me, right now if culture can counter it, without entering into the political arena, how will this Dravidian culture counter the wave of nationalism?
Can still have a legitimate counter to this without using your ideas of caste, your ideas of religion, your ideas of cult of personality, and your complete apprehension towards like functioning in this structure, and by saying that we will secede, we need like clear federalism, we will not like engage with any sort of negotiations with the center, right? Those are the inherent ingredients and the essential ingredients of Dravidian politics. You should have defended that. You have not done that, and you just merely dissolve Dravidian politics to just mean that we are politicians from Dravidian regions, and that is all it is, right? That is extremely problematic, on-site government as a whole, right? Especially with regard to the idea of cult of personality itself, right? This becomes another massive problem because of the manner in which you weaponize this for the benefit of yourself without pushing for any change, right? That is the manner in which it has functioned so far. We don't want it to function on that metric. We need Dravidian political parties to now allow for a little more negotiation with regard to federalism. We need them to be more amenable with regard to ideas of caste, and we don't want them to take hardline stances as they've taken so far. That has been extremely problematic for us. We welcome the decline of Dravidian politics.